In this video, we're going to work on Chapter 2, Homework Problem 4, from your Chapter 1 and 2 homework. If you'd like to follow along, open the file Chapter 1 and 2 homework.xlsx from My Courses and click on the Chapter 2, Problem 4 Worksheet tab. In Problem 4, the first thing that we're supposed to do is use COUNTIFs to COUNTIF to count the number of loan purposes and also checking account balances, and then we're supposed to use if statements to classify checking and savings as either low, medium, or high. So let's start with our COUNTIF. We're going to click in cell Q4, then we're going to click the Formulas tab. In the Function Library group, we're going to click More Functions, Statistical, and COUNTIF. The range that we want to count is our column A. So we're going to select the range A4 all the way down to A428. So it should read A4 to A428. Now before clicking away, hit your F4 key on the keyboard, or for your Mac users, do what you need to do to transfer it into an absolute cell reference, or just type the dollar signs. The range needs to read $A, $4 to $A, $428. Otherwise, the only formula that is going to be correct is the one in cell Q4. Now, we're going to click in the box that has the criteria, and we're just going to click on cell P4. That one we don't want to make an absolute cell reference, because as we copy it down, we want to change from P4 to P5, so it'll check automatically for furniture and new car loans, but as many times as we copy that, it will always check the correct range. So we can see we have a formula result of 105. We click OK. Then we'll make sure that the active cell is Q4. Hover over that fill handle. Remember, we get the skinny plus when we have the fill handle. Hold down your left mouse button and drag it down to large appliance, or you can just double click the fill handle. Now let's use our COUNTIF to count the number of checking account balances less than $500. This time we'll just type the COUNTIF. So we'll just type equals COUNTIF, open the parentheses. Our range is going to be the checking account balances. So we're going to select B4 all the way down to B428. Now we're going to type a comma to get into the criteria. I'm going to scroll up, but it's not necessary. We can see the formula in the formula bar. I just like to see the formula as I'm typing it. Unfortunately, for the criteria in the COUNTIF, it has to be within double quotes. So we're going to type double quote, then less than, which is shift comma, then 500. Unfortunately, we also cannot use a cell reference within the COUNTIF. Close up our double quotes, and then close up the parentheses. We now have our COUNTIF. We hit enter, and we see that we have 312 checking account balances that are under $500. Now we're going to move on to Part B, where we're going to classify the checking account balance as low if it is less than $250, medium if it's between $250 but less than $2,000, and high otherwise. In column C, I'm going to use the if statement, and we're going to have to nest if statements. But in column E, I'm going to use that new IFS, the ifs, that I showed you in the Chapter 2 videos. Let's start with the checking account balance. So we're going to click in cell C4, and we're going to do our if statement. So equals IF, open parentheses. The first thing that we're going to do is ask if the checking account balance is less than $250. So if B4 is less than is shift comma 250, now we tell it what to do if it's true. So if it's true, we want it to say that it is low. So shift double quote LOW, close your double quotes. Now we type a comma. Now we tell it what to do if it's false. Well, if it's false, we want it to test to see if it's between $250 but less than $2,000. So we're going to need another if statement. So we're going to type IF again and open the parentheses. Now we have to test two things. It has to be greater than or equal to 250 and at the same time less than 2,000, although if it were less than 250, the statement would have been true, so technically we don't have to test both in the second one, but I think to be safe we should test both in the second one. So after doing IF and open the parentheses, we're going to type AND and open the parentheses. So first it has to be greater than or equal to 250. So B4, we're going to have to type it because it's covering the cell reference. So B4 greater than or equal to 250, and at the same time B4 is less than 2,000. So we're going to close up the AND statement. So we've got our condition for the if. That whole AND statement is our condition for the second if. Now we're going to type a comma. If that is true, the balance is medium. So we're going to type double quote and then medium. Close up the double quote. Now we type a comma. We're going to ask what to do if that is false. So the third thing that we're going to do is if it's false, it's going to be large. We actually don't have to do the third test because if it's not less than 250 or between 250 but less than 2,000, it's going to have to be large. So for the third one, we can just type a double quote and then large. Close up our double quote. Now we have to close up all of our nested if statements. So we have to close up our first if statement. Then we have to close up our second if statement. And we have now completely closed up everything. We hit enter. And we see that that checking account balance is low. We're going to click on cell C4. Double click that fill handle. Remember, get it to be the skinny plus, and then double click. And we can see here that it actually does look like it works. We have some lows, we have some mediums, and I even saw a larger too. Alright, now let's click in cell E4 and let's use the IFS. We can use IFS instead of IF to test for this. So let's click cell E4, click formulas. In your function library group, you're going to click logical and then IFS. Once again, if you don't see the IFS or the ifs, it just means that you have an earlier version of Excel, and hopefully you're going to upgrade soon and be able to see it. If you don't see it, then just use the method that I used in column C. So we're going to click IFS, and our first logical test is going to be whether the savings account balance is less than $250. So we're going to ask if D4 is less than 250. If that in fact is true, the savings account balance is low. So double quote LOW, close up the double quote. We need the double quote because we're putting in text instead of a number. Now If logical test 1 is false, it's going to move on to logical test 2. So in logical test 2, we're going to ask if it's greater than or equal to 250 and at the same time less than $2,000. So in logical test 2, A and D, open the parentheses. First, D4 has to be greater than or equal to 250. Type a comma. And at the same time, D4 is less than, shift comma, 2000. Don't put a comma, otherwise it's not going to work. Close up your and. If that in fact is true, we're going to type medium. So double quote medium and close your double quote. Now, logical test 3 is if D4 is greater than 2,000. Notice we now have a scroll bar on the right so we can see all of our additional logical tests. If logical test 3 is true, then we're just going to have to type large. And we do not have to go on to logical test 4 because we've covered all bases at this point. Less than 250, between 250 and 2,000, greater than 2,000. So we click OK. As we can see, that one was a little bit easier, and it only involved one nest for the and. Instead of multiple nests, we click OK. And we see that the savings account balance is medium. Make sure that we're on cell E4. Get that fill handle, double click, and we have now done everything that's required for homework problem 4 in chapter 2.